Hey everyone. So on today's episode of Life in Law, we have a special guest with us, Christina. Christina, welcome to the show.
Hi, very glad to be here.
Thank you so much for making it. And can you just give a little brief intro about yourself, and a little bit about your background for our listeners?
Yes, again, um, I am a survivor of the family courts. Oh boy, I'm getting a little nervous. I'm a survivor of the family courts. I went through, why am I choking up? Why am
It's
I choking up?
okay. Don't be nervous. I know it's a little hard talking about some of this stuff, but
Okay, so I'm a survivor of the family courts in Connecticut. There was an illegal adoption with my daughter, and I had her when I was 19 years old, and she was taken into foster care and adopted at about two and a half, three. The adoption took place, and it was a very ugly process all the way around, and that's pretty much that.
and I'm really sorry that you had to deal with that. And myself dealing with the corruption within the state of Connecticut, I can 100% relate to what you're dealing with. And I know firsthand just how bad it could be. So thank you for being courageous enough to speak about your experience today.
Thank you.
So, I just wanted to get into a topic today that I think that many people can find relevant, which is about sexual abuse. And I know that in my case, everybody who is familiar with my case knows that one of the major problems was my daughter, who at the time was 3, made many disclosures of sexual abuse. The state of Connecticut, Department of Children and Families, New Britain Police Department, New Haven Superior Court, all of the above refused to make an arrest for the person that my daughter repeatedly said was sexually abusing her, which is her 18-year-old brother. And I think that it brings up a very important topic, which is the fact that now more than ever, it seems like people are starting to come out and be more vocal and saying, well, I experienced that too. My child experienced that too. I know my DMs get flooded every day and comments gets flooded. And so many people are now speaking up. And I think that, some of these really touchy subjects like human trafficking and sexual abuse and, child porn trafficking and some of these things, they were never acceptable topics to talk about. And would you agree that more recently it seems like less taboo for people to chime in about these things?
I would certainly agree. There's also a great voice out right now. That woman I had sent you the screenshot, Allie Carter, she's speaking on her story and how she was one of the children that was, trafficked and by DCF.
And what was her name?
Allie Carter, Allly. Her last name is Carter.
And is she from Connecticut also?
No,
Do you know what state she's in?
I don't. I know she moves around a lot because, she's got people following her while she's, speaking truth and telling her story. I think she's tried to get her story out there a few times, and it's just now recently catching the amount of traction that it is.
Yeah, and it's just amazing how so many people have reached out saying that the same thing has happened to them. And it just seems like, when I was growing up and maybe, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if stuff like this happened, that people would not talk about it. It would keep it hush hush, keep it within the family, don't say anything. It was almost like shameful to talk about it. Would you say that's your experience when you were younger too?
Absolutely. And my family as well. The females are very much like that, coded with the silent generation. My aunt spoke a bit about the silent generation to me that, exactly when things happen, you just kind of kept it to yourself and kept it moving.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the problem that, people think that everything is fine because nobody speaks up. And the more that people speak up, the more it gives other people the courage to also speak up and say, hey, this also happened to me and also happened to my daughter. And not be scared of the consequences. And, I definitely feel like more people feel safer now to be able to speak up because they can look and see examples of other people who are doing the same.
Precisely. I agree with that very much. Very
And
much so.
I know you mentioned, sometimes people are afraid and with the retaliation and things like that. Have you had any retaliation from the state or DCF that you want to share about?
I have had retaliation. There's a lot of different examples, but I guess I'll just start with the one, I'll just say the one about my son when I regained full custody of my son. Um, it was the same exact month that they shut off my EBT. And it was almost like it felt like a setup for failure, really, in a way, or to like try to get me to do something illegal, low vibrational, like go steal or something like that. But no, but yeah, they position people, they angle people. I wouldn't be surprised if they even have private investigators, try to be, create chaos.
Yeah. I actually tried to hire a private investigator one time because I was convinced my ex was literally like put some tracking device in my car. So I hired this PI to search the car. And he told me that he actually also works as an independent contractor for the state of Connecticut and that lots of the PIs, if not all of them, do the same. And that, if the job is supposed to be paid $200, they'll fluff up the invoice and milk it and say it was $1,000. And he was like laughing, saying, "Oh yeah, Connecticut doesn't care. Everybody's just, it's like a free for all to just, scam them." And there's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of money laundering. There's a lot going on. And I think that we are going to see some people going down in federal indictments, just like we've seen with the mayor of New York City. And I think a lot of times the FBI and the federal government will wait until they have a really solid case before they indict. They don't just arrest or do a warrant unless they know because they don't like to lose. So I'm hoping and praying that, we will start to see them cracking down on Connecticut because it seems like this little state always gets overlooked and
It,
it needs to
sorry.
be it needs to be looked at with a magnifying glass, not overlooked. But yeah.
Absolutely.
And so you found me from TikTok, right?
Correct.
And you've always lived in Connecticut your whole life?
Yes, sadly, yes.
Same here. So I think it's, amazing how like social media can bring people to connect to others that, we're living in the same state for our whole lives and never cross each other's paths, but social media was what connected us. And, it brings us into the next, part of the discussion, which was about how, social media can help get genuine information out to the public. And compared to the traditional media, like the news and the radio and the things people see on TV. I know in my case, I tried many times to go to the news. I tried to go to all of the news stations in Connecticut, and they said to me that they have a contract with the state of Connecticut that says they're not allowed to report anything bad about what happens in the family courts. They're not allowed to report anything bad about the courts at all. And if it's a pending case, they can't even say anything. So it's a little bit scary because a lot of people, they only believe things if they see it or hear it on the news. And
Right.
I mean, I know myself personally now, it seems like more and more I'm getting my news from TikTok and Instagram and social media. And
Directly from the
yeah,
source, yes. The people are posting their experiences and they're speaking more about, I'm really glad that this has really opened the floor for people, social media. This is a big change compared to when I was in, middle school, high school. This is there's something popping up on my screen that says, "Thank you for choosing Zoom. This meeting has been upgraded by the host and now includes," okay. I just press
okay.
okay. It's not
Yes,
gonna end.
yes.
Oh,
It
oh,
finally upgraded us, so we're good to go. We won't get cut off.
oh.
But yeah, so and do you think that maybe social media gives more people like maybe the courage to feel safe to speak up?
Yes, absolutely, because more hands on deck, the more safety, absolutely. The more eyes watching. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I know like I don't know about in any of your cases, but I know like with mine that they were telling me do not post on social media. You cannot post. Like when they took my daughter, I knew they violated my rights. I knew what they did was illegal. I just wanted to go and make a post that second. I wanted to literally go on social media and even I didn't have a lot of followers. I had like few thousand followers like and I just wanted to scream it from everywhere and tell everybody in the world. And I said, you know, if I posted this, it would get millions of views. And everybody's like, don't do it. Don't do it. They'll retaliate. They'll retaliate. And I listened to that for months. I was silent. I was silently suffering. And it seemed like every time I went on TikTok and stuff, I would see things popping up on my For You page of other people talking about family court and talking about law and talking about this. And it wasn't until I saw one girl who she had experience with Connecticut. She was posting stuff where she was like posting actual phone calls with some of these state officials and things like that. And I was like, oh, I'm instantly going to follow her. And then it almost made me feel a little bit more comfortable. And once I started to really post, then it just blew up. And now so many other people are also posting where we have every state in the country is dealing with fraud and corruption and this trafficking circle that's going on.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting how that domino effect works because that's how you told your story and then I found you and it gave me, you know, the strength to get on here and tell my story and speak on my experience. So I'm really grateful for you pushing past that fear, truly.
And thank you so much for, coming on again because I know it's really hard and especially like thinking that people might judge you. And I think so many people can be mean and they don't want to believe that this stuff is real. They don't want to believe that this can actually happen. But if one person, two people, 20 people all keep saying the same thing happened, then it's not just one person who's upset. It's an ongoing systemic pattern that they are doing racketeering and illegal stuff and they're getting rich off of this and they're literally selling and trafficking our kids. Tell us a little bit about what the you mentioned having some fraudulent adoption. Can you tell us a
Yeah,
little more about what the state did and how they violated your rights?
they violated my 14th Amendment. Um, this is a due process. That was no due process at all. I just, I recall that whole scenario being very like the DCF worker would say one thing one day and then the next day another thing, and then we get to the courthouse and it's a completely different story. So these people work off of chaos. They rely on you being in survival mode because if you can't think straight, then you know what I mean, then they get over on you. That's literally what they rely on. And with the 14th Amendment, yeah, my daughter, she was adopted by a couple who is on the Litchfield County Board, and they also the wife, she is a Sunday school teacher at the local church. And yeah, I don't know. It really, the child is supposed to go with the least restrictive means. That's what it was said in court, right? So in my case, I was young. I figured if I wasn't good enough, then the next best thing would be my biological sibling, my brother and his wife, who my sibling is 13 years older than me. He had more stability at the time. And I said, okay, I'm okay with that. If my brother and my sister-in-law adopt my daughter, I'm fully okay with that. At least I know she's with family and with people that I know will raise her the right way. And it didn't go that way. They were all on board, and this is all in the documentation. And at the last moment, I guess the court had decided that my daughter was attached to her foster parents. She had only been there for about 3 or 4 months at that time. And in the first 30 days that she was there, she had broken her clavicle. her collarbone. There was never a proper investigation into that. Um,
So she had
yeah,
broken bones in foster care, and these
yep.
foster parents were able to adopt her.
Yes, correct. This was before the adoption. And when I asked how did this happen, they said that she was standing at the top of the stairs wearing a plastic pair of princess play shoes and kind of tripped and lost her balance. Where is the baby gate?
And did DCF have any concerns about this when you told them all these things? Did they care at all?
No, no, the DCF worker, Reagan Horvey, is the one that called me. It was after 7:30 at night. And I remember that phone call to this day, looking at my phone, seeing the number. I'm like, why are they calling at this time? Like, it's weird. And just I answered the phone. Her voice was shaky. She just explained to me that my daughter Adelina had broken her clavicle and she had to let me know. She had to let me know. And then that was it. That was pretty much it. After that, it got swept right under the rug.
Wow. And so she's still living with them to this day.
Yes. And she does have a great relationship with my brother and sister-in-law, though. They let her, spend time with them and sleep over. And they have a daughter who is a couple years older, and they're very well bonded.
And do you have any contact with her at all?
Cards. I think that they have her as a way to handle her emotions. They'll have past Mother's Day was the first time I actually got any of them. So they
I'm
gave them
sorry,
to my brother though, and then
I don't know if it's my
this
connection or
past Mother.
yours, but you cut out for a second. You were saying something about cards that she sent you, or
Yeah, so I think they have her write cards and letters as like a way to get through her emotions and stuff like that. So they have her write to me. And this past Mother's Day though was the first time that I had ever gotten any of those letters or cards. They were not sent directly to me. They were given to my brother, and then my brother and sister-in-law gave them to me. But I'm just grateful either way.
yeah, I know it's difficult. Like, this year was the first Mother's Day that I didn't get to be with my kids, and it's like torture. It's the definition of torture under international law, under the UN. There's treaties preventing torture against people, women and children, and what they're doing in the family courts and the juvenile courts and the child protection. It's it's beyond what anyone can imagine. So, it's difficult, but at least you were able to finally get those. Would they let you write back, or do they give you a hard time?
They would hold my letters and go over them before they gave them to her. So I just kind of I don't know, there's nothing I could really do to get past that. I just sent her a care package a couple of months ago with a blanket and keychains and different things I ordered online. But I also I drove by their house. I don't care. I don't care. I went to their house and knocked right on the door. And this was at evening time. It was dark outside. And for some reason, my daughter was the only child that was not there. The foster mother, Beatrice, came out and she's like, "Hi, nice to finally meet you." And this and that. And she was like, "I was just gonna let you know, like, for future reference, but you probably shouldn't stop by again because my husband will call the cops." And I'm thinking to myself, it's evening time. You have two other little girls that are here that are your daughters, or whether they're adopted. I'm not even sure at this point. However, why is it evening time? It's dark out. Why is my daughter the only one not here and neither is your husband?
And nobody could explain where she was.
No, no.
And how old is your
It,
daughter now?
now she was born January 14th, 2013. So we're going into 11 years now. Going into, yeah, she just turned 11. I hate
Wow.
counting the time. I make that very clear. I hate counting the amount of time that we have been apart. It's very difficult for me.
And I know a lot of people think, I hear this all the time where people say, oh, once the child's 12 years old, they can make their own choice about where they want to live and things like that. And in my experience, I don't think that's actually true. Have you ever heard something like that where In Connecticut, kids get a say in who they live with once they reach a certain age, because I think that's not happening in our state.
No, no, absolutely not. And if that was the case, my daughter would be setting up right now to come home to me. In those cards, she says, "I can't wait to tell you everything. I think anybody would be lucky to have you as a mother." Those are direct quotes from what she wrote with her heart, her soul, her handwriting. So no, that is not happening. They are not giving the children their room to speak. No.
And from what you understand, um, the foster parents get paid through the state payments when they're fostering kids, and there's a financial incentive to continue keeping the children, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They actually upgraded their house. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is all part of the whole trafficking scam where, it's like they're abusing the Title 4D funding, and whether it's with child support or child protection or, custody, people do not realize that these federal funding incentives get used by the states and exploited by the states to then fund the pensions of these judges. And so they do not care. They're getting paid every time that they destroy a family. And they know that these parents like us will continue to fight and get lawyers and file and do all these things. And it's more money in their pocket. Not to mention when they send you for court ordered therapy and court ordered drug testing and court ordered reunifications, and all of these things cost money. And if you don't have the money and the state gives you a fee waiver, the state is still collecting the money at the end of the day off the taxpayers. And so it's like a circle. And it's really, really scary what's going on in Connecticut. And I think people really need to understand that it could happen to me, it could happen to you, it could happen to anyone. I've seen even lawyers and doctors going to jail for, trying to protect their kids. And in jail now, there's even a mom who the judge said she wanted to pay like, 15,000 in attorney's fees to the ex-husband. And I think she was like a Harvard educated lawyer. And she said she didn't have the money and they put her in prison. And I think she's still in prison.
I feel like finances or lack thereof should never disclude you from being a parent. Anybody. It should never, disclude. I
Exactly. And it seems like discrimination against like women and mothers, because like you'll see like a lot of the men's prisons will literally have like buses shipping the kids to go visit with their dads in jail. And there's all these programs like access and visitation grants, and there's so much support for fatherhood, but nothing for moms. And so like they're taking kids, ripping them away from loving, protecting moms, giving them to abusive fathers, and making the moms go crazy, ending up in jail, kill themselves, or in a mental hospital. And then the children grows up with a fucked up life, excuse my language, and they turn into big pharma patients and in the system their whole life. And that's why I believe that Yale is a big major player in this, and they grossly harmed our family beyond repair and taking no responsibility for it and just continuing to retaliate, cover it up. I still can't even get records. And like the forensic interview, which was conducted at Yale, my daughter disclosed being sexually abused by her 18-year-old brother, Dominic Lodice, at the forensic interview on March 3rd, 2023, in front of Leah Smith from the Yale Child Abuse Clinic. And to this day, I have zero access to that forensic interview. They will never give it to me. They said that nobody's ever allowed to see it, watch it, or have a copy of it, and that it's property of the New Britain Police Department. So it's like, what are they trying to hide? If this is supposed to be a medical record, I have a legal right to access it. If you're hiding it, did my daughter say more in there that you don't want me to see? Because she was very vocal. And everybody who sees my videos is like, oh, call the police, call the police. Like, yeah, I did. Call DCF, I did. And now what? Now I lost my daughter for saying that. So maybe if I had just took her and left and went somewhere to a safe house or something and got real protection, maybe she would still be with me right now. Maybe Juliana would still be with me right now. But because I tried to follow their system and their rules and do it the legit way, I was punished.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. Anytime the entity of DCF, CPS gets involved, it really doesn't go anywhere good. I've never really heard of a great outcome from CPS, to be honest.
And like, what you said with the 14th Amendment, like for them to be able to actually like terminate a parent's rights and, allow a child to be adopted, they're supposed to give you a competent attorney. You're supposed to have the right to have witnesses, full due process, the same as if it was a criminal case. Like if you're going on a trial for murder, you have the right to have all these protections before they convict you. The same goes with terminating your rights. And do you think that they allowed you to have a fair trial and provided you with competent lawyer for that hearing?
Absolutely not, especially when I got to Middletown Court, Middletown, Connecticut, and that was a whole new attorney. That was a male attorney, and I had spent a handful of months on phone calls with him talking about my case and every detail. You know, my brother and sister-in-law were involved, and then the day that we got to the high appeal courts in Middletown, Connecticut, and we walked in front of the three judges, all of a sudden my attorney started like stuttering, and I was actually like shocked. Like, wow, I've talked to this man on the phone for plenty of months. Like, is this the same person, or like
It's almost like they got to him.
the way he was shaking, I almost feel bad for what I had said to him when I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, are you?" I kind of got a little frustrated with him when we were walking out, and I feel a little bad now, but maybe he shouldn't have been so fearful. So I don't know.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of them have literally told me, like to my face, that they've been threatened to lose their law license, where they'll get threats from the bar to be pressured not to help and say, like, if you help this person, you'll never work again. You'll lose your license. And that's what they did to the lawyer, Nicola Cunha. She tried to help people and asked the judge to recuse himself, and they turned around and disbarred her and put her in jail. So imagine being a lawyer for like 20, 30 years, working your whole life for that career. That's not easy to do. And then you lose it all because you actually try to help somebody and stand up for what's right.
Right, right. That's I think the same goes even with the social workers themselves, how, they go through schooling and they owe all those student loans for, to become a resource specialist or family, whatever they want to call themselves. And it kind of sort of becomes it's my family over yours. If I don't do this, then my family's not going to be able to, we're not going to have, it's all about finances. It's all about the money. It always comes down to the money and the power.
Exactly. And it's like they're like monetizing our children by putting dollar signs on our kids and saying, okay, child support, okay, money for, foster care, this, that. Like, it's like our kids are not for sale. And like, this is no different from literally taking somebody and selling them into the sex trade, because a lot of these kids are getting abused. And I know for a fact my daughter is being abused. I know for a fact that her father and his family and everybody is aware of this, and that they are not only covering it up, but they're encouraging it and allowing it. And sometimes I just feel so powerless. But I think that, the more that people speak up, like we said earlier, the more of a chance that maybe somebody will listen. Because if there's 1,000 corrupt people that work for the FBI that look the other way, maybe there's one person that has a genuine moral compass. And maybe that one person will see my podcast or see my TikTok or see my YouTube. And if not, then if I could help, raise awareness so that other people don't fall into the same mistakes I did, then at least I'm helping people. And also to like put set the record straight, because
Agreed.
our children deserve to know the truth. And who knows what these people say to the kids? They lie and tell the kids, oh, mommy left you or mommy didn't care and da da da. And like, if the kids try to go look at the records, they're confidential or they're destroyed or they're altered or they're filled with lies. And so it's like, you know, that's why it's important to always be able to set the story straight. And, even if you don't send a letter back, maybe, writing the letters and then keeping them. And then one day when she's older, then you can give it to her and say, here's all the letters that I wrote for you all these years. So she can see
That's actually
the
a
truth.
fantastic idea. Sorry.
Yeah.
That is a wonderful idea, though.
And so you've dealt with Middletown Court.
Yeah, that was for the appeal. Initially, the court I had dealt with the most was in Torrington, Connecticut, family court. And then, yeah, when they went to terminate my rights and I appealed that, and that's how I made it to Middletown.
Did you ever have Judge Torres,
That's
Jessica Torres?
maybe that sounds familiar. I do recall in Middletown there was two females and one male. And I found it so interesting that they had like three judges. It was kind of intimidating a little bit.
That was for the appeal, right?
Yeah, yep.
And the appeal went nowhere. They didn't.
Nowhere at all. And I had to wait a couple of months. I think it was like 2 or 3 months after the court date to get the verdict from the appeal. So that was like, me just sitting there, just waiting in angst and very low vibrations.
Yeah, it took a whole entire year for my appeal to get a decision. And they came back and they wrote one sentence saying, we affirm the trial court's decision. And then a month later, the Supreme Court in Connecticut ruled that it's illegal and unconstitutional for a judge to issue orders like that, but they still wouldn't change anything in my case. And so it's like, this is another problem where people think like, okay, well, the Supreme Court said this or the appeals court said this, and now it changes the law. Yeah, it does. But the problem is that these people are not following the law. If we were going by the law as it's written, none of this would be happening. But they are literally doing whatever they want with no oversight. And if you try to say anything, you get retaliated against, blacklisted, punished, and criminalized. Like, so if you could give advice to any other Connecticut moms who might be listening or watching that might find themselves, in the early stages of dealing with family court or dealing with DCF or, things like this, false allegations. Um, what would you say to another mom who might be going through something like this?
Keep everything on record, record everything, trust your motherly instinct, trust your intuition, and do not let them overwhelm you because that is their goal. Once you're in a low vibration, they could work with their agenda much deeper. So you always got to keep the bigger picture in mind and yeah, record everything. Keep everything on record. Don't let their threats deter you. And try to find a support system. You can't always trust your own relatives, your own family.
Your
You
own
think you could
lawyer.
trust, yeah, you think you could trust these professionals, but sadly, that's not always the case. So just do what feels right to you and keep going in that direction. That's all I could say. It's a long road. They say every case is different. That's why they never want to give an answer because they don't have an answer to give. Every case is different to them because they got to figure out how to meddle in every single person's life, case to case.
Exactly. And everybody's life is unique, so they find a way to ruin your life depending on the circumstances that there are.
Correct.
But I do agree that it's like a mental spiritual warfare where they're trying to like break you down emotionally and spiritually and like it's the more you can just stay strong and not react and not like you said, what oh you wake up, oh they cut off your snap or whatever it is, and it's just whatever they're doing. It might not seem like a big deal, but all these little things, it's like picking at you, and they want you to just blow up and snap. And I've seen other moms fall into those traps and end up getting arrested and stuff like that. So I definitely agree that it's important to keep your strength. And what do you do for you know, self-care and trying to cope with all of this?
I do a lot of meditating. and researching other cases alike to, gain as much knowledge as I can. So I know when the day comes that I am reunified with my daughter for good, I can try to at least fill in as many blanks as possible.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important because, she is going to see the truth one day. And like you said before, documenting and recording and putting things organized. And personally, I like to do like a Google Drive folder and stuff because you can look at it from any device and you can share it with people. And this way, one day when she's older, you can say, here's the link, here's the flash drive with everything, and here's the truth.
Agreed.
So, I want to thank you again for your time today. And thank you so much. I know it's difficult to talk about this, and I know it takes a lot of courage to come on camera and talk about this stuff publicly like this. And so, thank you again for, putting your story out there. And I know that other women are going to listen and hear this and feel more comfortable to talk about what's happening to them.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. I'm sad that it has to be under these circumstances that we're connecting, but I'm glad that we found each other and we were able to connect. And thank you so much for leading with your torch. Honestly, thank you.
Thank you so much. It means a lot that you're here today. So keep up what you're doing and keep fighting.
You too. Talk
Okay.
soon.
Okay.
Bye bye.